Hello Reborners, my name is Karen and this is Making Dolls with Karen. We have Frankie on the table. Frankie is a little, and Frankie has a deficit in his head up here. I can definitely feel he has a couple of spots where his sealer didn't tank. Frankie is a little artist kit by Bountiful Baby. He was sculpted by Denise Pratt. His limbs are the same limbs that Charlotte has. Charlotte is a discontinued kit that was sculpted by Denise Pratt as well, and they often use the same limbs for more than one doll. And so these limbs are the same exact limbs that Charlotte has, and I know because it says Charlotte on her rims. And I happen to know these are his correct limbs, so it's not just somebody stuck the wrong limbs in there. I'm going to have to put some more sealer on his head right up here before I put him in the oven for his enhancement bake. It won't affect his enhancements at all. You can see he looks a little yellowed compared to well, I don't have another blank kit handy, but he looks a little bit yellowed. But it won't hurt anything. He's not yellow enough that I need to correct him or anything. It'll just make a darker baby to begin with, which is what I like anyway. Yep, he's got a couple spots, I think. I'm just going to hit his head up here on top with some more sealer because we want him to be, good. That's how I tell, is I just feel around on their head and you can tell if there's sealer on them or not. And he's not evenly sealed. But anyway, we're going to start on his enhancements. I don't put any enhancements up here, so it won't matter. And we're going to start with putting some blue over here in the corners of his eyes. Hopefully it's going to show a little bit. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. It'll show now, but then later when you put layers of paint over the top of it, it just doesn't show. And well, I think it still does something, but you won't see the blue as much as you might want to. Let's put it that way. You have to dab it a little bit or else it's just funny looking. Now I'm going to also put some blue. Hopefully there's some blue in this brush across his forehead up here a little bit, because it's one of the spots where baby's skin is the thinnest. When they're first born, it looks a little blue there. Anywhere on your doll where you think that in a real baby it would be thinner skin, that's where we put a little bit of blue color, because it's under our skin, our blood looks blue. And that's what we're after, is a little bit of depth and realism in our doll. And you shouldn't be able to see it at all. Maybe you can see a shadowy effect, but that'd be all. And now, because he's got some places on his face that can be enhanced with purple, I'm going to put a little purple on him too. Hopefully one of these brushes has got some purple in it. He is a very, very cute little doll. And I've had 4 or 5 Frankies, but they've always sold. He's a popular little kit. And so he's got some wrinkles on his forehead. You can choose to enhance if you want to. You don't have to. In fact, you don't have to enhance anything on their face if you don't want to. But it looks a little more realistic. It gives them a little bit more depth in their color. And it makes them look a little more like they're not just a hunk of plastic that you're trying to color. That one doesn't have much color. My purple markers, excuse me, they're not markers, paint brushes are slightly not full of paint because they're all thin like this. Most of them are. I have one thick one. But maybe you can see that I just enhanced these little lines above his brow line. And we can enhance these little wrinkles going across his forehead if we want to. We don't have to. And I think a little bit of enhancement, not a lot. I don't want them to be really super pronounced because it would look kind of funny. But just a little bit of enhancement on them will make them have a little bit of a shadowy looking effect. You can barely see it, and that's the way it should be, I think. And sometimes stuff like that, you don't see it at the end, but because it's there, you can see that he has wrinkles on his forehead a little better. That's all it does, really. And that's all we're after, really. And so now I'm going to put his head down for a moment, and I'm going to try to, you can also crease these with a pencil or whatever way you crease. I don't do the creasing on the face because it just looks fake and funny. I'm going to put him down for a minute, and I'm going to get his hands, and I'm going to darken his fingers a little bit. Now, he's got nice open hands. He has just the right kind of hands to make that look. If you watched any of my other doll series, you know that when a doll has open hands like this, I like to, let me use this hand, it's a little more open. I like to paint each one of these little individual segments of the hand separately and individually where it almost looks like their fingers are striped. But in the end, it's a very cute effect that you can get on your doll. And with open hands, it's real easy to do. Now, closed hands or really curled up hands, not so much. It's very, very hard. But this hand is very, very good for that. I'm going to try to do it, and I'll show you what I'm doing as I do it. That is, if I can find brushes that have paint in them. I dip my brushes in my colors, and I'll have a whole little container of brushes that has that color in it. And now for the red, the blush color, I have 3 containers because I use mostly red on my dolls. That's in the enhancements, that's the color that I use the most of. And not only that, it takes more of it to show up for some reason. It'll show up very, very vaguely at first on your doll. And sometimes you have to do 2 different rounds of enhancements just to get your red right. But it's important to get it right, because if you don't, you're going to have something funny looking on your doll. But I dip my brushes in there and into the color, and then I just wipe off all the excess and put them in here and let them dry. And even though they are dry, I can brush them right on my hand and nothing gets on me. But when you're brushing it on the doll, it still looks a little bit wet, like it's still not completely dry. I don't know how to explain that. I call it dry brushing. As far as I know, no other artists, unless they saw it from me, are doing this technique. I just learned about it accidentally when I was working on one of my dolls, and I just wanted the blush in a certain area on the doll to be a little bit darker than it was, but my brushes were all dry. And I didn't want to break out a whole lot of paint and all that stuff to try to get it darker. So I said, I wonder if this is just wet enough, just barely wet enough to do anything. That one doesn't hardly have any color in it. I'm going to get another one. And I tried it, and it worked. And oh, that's much better. And it put some color on my doll, and I didn't have to, break out a whole bunch of paint and mess up a whole bunch of stuff. I don't wash my brushes, and I never have really. I've always kept a different brush for each color, because washing your brushes just helps wear them out quicker, at least for heat set. Now, if you're doing air dry, you have to wash your brushes. They'll get crunchy and hard, I think. I mean, the sponges do. And so it's a whole different ball game with air dry. But with heat set, it's my advice that you don't wash your brushes, because let's say you are using a flesh color. You just use the flesh color, and when you're finished, you just put your paintbrush in the jar and just leave it, and next time you get it out and you use it again. Doesn't hurt it a bit. Not a bit. And I've noticed I don't buy those real highly expensive paintbrushes because they don't last any longer, that I can tell, than these cheaper ones. And they all break. They are made from a plasticky like material on the handles and stuff. And most of them have a gripper thing like this one does. It doesn't matter where you buy them. They all are basically just a paintbrush. And what happens is, eventually, the paint thinner will get down underneath this little metal part right here. and it'll get all the way down to here, and it'll start eating away at this little plastic thing here. And once that's gone, it comes apart. This top part will just fall off. And then you have either a choice to make. Either I try to repair my paintbrush or I throw it out. And the more you get your paintbrush down in paint thinner, the more it's going to do that, the quicker. So I don't like to douse my brushes in a bunch of paint thinner just to get off a color that I'm going to put right back on there the next doll I make. Seems counterproductive to me. Anyway, I've painted every little segment on his fingers. You can see it better on the back of the hand. Each little segment's painted, and then the same thing with the palm of the hand. I'm going to try to paint each one of these little areas individually and separately, and so that there's a definition between them, so that when I do crease him, you can see the crease marks. Because if you paint the whole hand pink-ish, and when I say pink, I mean this bloody red color right here. It comes out looking a little bit pink on your doll like this, but you do not want to mix a pink color to put on your doll. Pink is the wrong color. And on the back of the hand, I just put a little swirl of paint like that and just call it even. You just want the hand blushed a little. Same thing on this hand. I'm going to do the same thing. Now, if you're unable to paint these little segments, don't worry about it. You can paint the whole fingers pink. You don't have to paint any of it pinker. I just like the hands and feet to be a little pinker than the rest of the doll. It just looks cuter. And now remember, if you're just painting just the back of the hand, let's say, or the palm of the hand, you don't necessarily have to paint the sides of the fingers. It's not necessary. But if you're painting the front and the back, you need to paint the sides, or you're going to have a funny looking finger on your doll. It's going to look really strange. I've done it before and forgot to paint the sides. I go, oh my goodness, that looks weird. And I go back and paint the sides. I'm just trying to leave a little bit of the finger not painted pink. It's a whole lot easier to paint the whole finger pink. I promise you it is. So if you want to do that, just go on and do that. If you don't want to do it at all, skip it. But I just like the hands to be a little bit pinker. And this is not even going to show. I can tell you that right now. I'm going to have to do it again. I'll have to get a fresher brush that has darker paint in it. After some time of leaving your brushes sitting, they dry out to the point where they're not even going to put any color on your doll hardly. And that's what's happened to some of my brushes. They're just very, very void of paint. It's dried out a little too much. Okay, now the feet. I'm going to put a little blue on the bottom of the foot. On a baby's foot, they don't really have an arch. Baby's feet are just like a pad of fat. They're just puffy and fat. But they've made these dolls to have kind of an arch in their foot a little bit. So right in the part that would be the arch, that's where I put the blue. And we want to try to get a brush that has some blue in it. I don't know if any of these do. Because we want the blue to actually show on the bottom of the foot enough where it was worthwhile to do it. Now that's a real hard thing to do. You want to be able to see it. And you don't want it too bold and dark. That would look just weird. But any place on a doll, on a baby, where the skin is a lot thinner, you can put as little or as much blue on your doll as you want to. I personally don't like a lot of blue on my doll, and so I just put a little bit. Now the rest of the foot is going to be pinkish. I'm going to try to paint the whole rest of the bottom of the foot is going to be pink. And after he comes out from his first bake, I might just let him sit here and dry first, and then I'm going to, but in that case, you won't see me doing the creases. It's not like you can see it anyway. You just see me doing this with a pencil, and you can't really see what I'm doing, but I just go in every one of these little creases with the pencil and crease him up a little bit, and it's cute. it's a process. It doesn't take very long, but you have to decide for yourself. What creases do I want to enhance? Do I want to do every single crease on the doll? Do I only want to do the most prominent ones? Do I only want to do them in certain areas of the doll? These are just personal choices that you're going to make for yourself as you go along. And sometimes when you see other people's work, you will see how they crease their doll, and you'll say, oh, I think I like that. I'm going to start doing that to my doll. And then you'll try it out, and if you like it, you'll keep doing it. But there's a pink foot and pink toes on the front. That's all I do to the feet. Now I'm going to do this one the same way. I'm going to need a new brush. That one has very little to no paint in it. When you first get them out, they have a lot more paint in them, and they paint a lot better. And then it just starts running out real quick. That's one thing about dry painting, is the paint in the brush is only a limited amount because it did dry out. You have to remember that it's pretty much dry. You can pretty much touch this and it's not going to get on your fingers. You don't want to rub it too much, because if you do, you're going to take some of the paint off. Rubbing tends to take the paint off. But just touching it, it's going to stay pretty much. I mean, this is better than trying to do it with wet paint. I've done it both ways. And with the wet paint, you get a lot of running, and dark paint will be down in these creases, and you'll have to be doing a lot of dabbing to get it off, and layer after layer to even get it this dark, and it's very frustrating. So I started doing it this way. As soon as I discovered you could, I started doing it. And this is the way I do it now. I do all my enhancements this way. You can't really paint a doll this way, the whole doll, because it would just take 1,000 brushes probably. But you can certainly do your enhancements this way. All the enhancements that I do this way. With the exception of when I was doing yellow. I didn't do the yellow this way. Now, this hand is almost completely dry. You can barely see any color on it at all. I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go on and paint the fingers completely, because it's not coloring very good when you're having to just dab in little spots. And they look really cute with their fingers completely painted too. I like both effects. I just like to do the one effect whenever I'm able to, because it is a little bit cuter. I've seen several people who did their dolls that way, and I took pictures of their hands and feet so I could try to duplicate it. And I've done it a few times, duplicated it exactly right, and it looked really, really cute. But sometimes I just can't achieve it, and I end up doing this. So it's okay either way you want to do it. Now, I'm going back to his face because it's had a little time for the blue to dry. He's got an open mouth, which creates a problem when you're painting dolls, when you're making dolls. Not necessarily in the paint part, but when you're going to try to put the magnet and stuff in. However deep the mouth looks open in the front, there's a little piece of vinyl sticking out like a lump inside the head, and it makes the magnet not want to sit straight sometimes, and you'll end up with a crooked looking magnet stuck in your doll's head. So you have to be very careful about that you're making your magnet go to the part where it needs to go. I need a smaller brush. I do have some smaller brushes with red in them too, but they just don't hold very much red, so I don't use them very much. I'm just coloring his lips a little bit. This is not meant to be his lip color. This is a guide for his lip color, pretty much. I like to start the lips very early in the process because it's a color you have to build. Putting on thick lip color is not good. More thin layers is much, much better. Keep you some swabs by your table with points on them. These pointy ones are very good. And if you get out of the line, you can just wipe it off. Wiping is very beneficial when you're trying to remove paint that hasn't been baked on yet. I'm also going to color his nose a little bit. I like their nose to be a little pinker. Just the tip, really. I don't do the entire nose. It may sound weird, but it's really not. It's really cute. You don't want to make it real dark. You don't want Rudolph. We just want a pinkish little nose. It's just a slight, and I'm putting it up inside his nostrils too. They have to be colored as well. I think it's cute. And now I'm going to do his ears the same way. We may have to change brushes several times to do these ears. They're kind of big, and you want to get them completely the same color all over. Front and back, the rims, the inside, all parts of the ear, the same color. So it's a little bit harder to do than the other parts of them because they're just a tight space behind the ears. But once you get the hang of it, you hold the head at a certain angle and just brush up and down, and it'll get pretty much the ear without getting any on the head. That's what we want to do, not get it on the head. If you get it on the head, you can use a swab to wipe that off as well. But you have to be really careful because you'll wipe it off the ear too. Then you're back to square one trying to color the ear. And it's just this is something you get used to after a little while, is coloring the ears. Just slightly pink. We don't want them real red. And you'll notice after this doll comes out of the oven that none of these enhancements are going to be as bold as they look right now. The general rule is everything gets lighter when it bakes. It also gets lighter when it dries, but not as light as it's going to get when it bakes. When it bakes, it's going to be a lot lighter. Now, that doesn't mean to go and try to make a dark color on your doll because it's going to get lighter, because you'll just get it too dark trying to do that. Believe me, I've been there. That doesn't have any paint in it. When I'm doing the ears, I like brushes that are a little bit flatter. The fluffy brushes just get too much of the head. That's why there's so many different shapes of brushes, I guess, because for different jobs, you need a different kind of brush. They just work a little better. You don't get any mess when you're dry painting. There's no scratchy looking. You know, if you put wet paint on like this and you don't just dab the fire out of it, it's going to be just really rashy looking and weird and messy. But see, it's just very clean painting when you're using dry brushes. And now I'm going to blush his face. Now this is the hardest part of the blushing because, well, it's a big area and you want it dark. This is going to have to be a lot darker than, say, the lips are or the nose. I'm making his nose a little bit darker. But it's going to be darker because it needs to not only show after the bake, but it needs to show with all the other layers on top of it. There's no way you're going around the blush with other colors. There's just no way. So you're going to have to put the other colors right on top of the blush, so it's going to have to show. So I'm going to just start putting it on. That's just all you can do. I like to use a much bigger brush than that, and a fluffy one works better. I just dab it on and keep dabbing until I think it's the right color. This is an experience thing, mostly. You're going to get it as dark as you think you need it, and then when you pounce it around, you're going to find that it's fading away. And so what I do is I put it on kind of dark like that, and then I take my kabuki brush, and they're not really good for hardly anything else but just to do this with. Some people paint with them, but I don't recommend it. I used to paint with a kabuki when it first became all the rage, and I found that not good. You don't get your best finish with a kabuki. This is just, the reason I'm using a kabuki on this is because it has these hard, flat bristles, and you can pound the doll real hard and spread out this paint to where it doesn't just have a hard stop. You don't want red, nothing, you know. You want it to be lighter, gone, you know, like that. Now, you're not going to really get that, but you can spread it as much as you can to where it's softer looking and just nicer looking. And we're going to do this side the same way. We're just going to swirl a lot on his cheek, and when your brush doesn't have any paint, you're just going to switch to another one. And we're going to get this side gussied up too and make it kind of dark. And still, this is not going to be dark enough. This is not dark enough. What we're going to do is we are going to get it to the color that it looks like it's dark enough, but I can tell it's not because I've done it so many times. And then when we bake him and he comes back out, we're going to do part 2 of his enhancements. Enhancements are going to take 2 goes to get them done right. So that's his face so far. He's blushy on both sides. Now I'm going to put a little bit on his forehead up here. I just put it to one side. I don't just blush his entire forehead. I started doing this when I first started making dolls. I don't know, I just did it. And then it became my thing. I do it on every doll I do. I give them a little red spot on their forehead. My sister said it looks like they bumped their head. Your doll bumped its head. I said, okay, that's his little trademark, his signature mark, my little mark. You can pick a mark or you don't have to. It's all up to you. It looks like that now. Now, because his eye area is so pale looking, you can tell by looking at him. He's pink all around, but his eyes are just pale, super pale. You can pick. I want to put red there. I want to put purple there. It's called eyelid purple for a reason. But purple is not as magic as you might think it is. Sometimes it's not. It does have a kind of pinkish look to it, but not quite as pink as you would like it to be, probably. Purple can be your friend and it can be your enemy, depending on how much of it you use, how you use it, where you put it. It's all just subjective to what you like. And we want a color there. That's what we want. And dabbing it, if that's good enough, you don't have to kabuki it. There you go. We don't want his eye area to look super, super bland. And it does. It still does. Which one of these brushes was I using? Just need to get a little underneath his eyes too. I put it on the top, but I didn't put it underneath. I think that's a purple one. Okay, there we go. That looks a little better. There is a color there now. It's not super white looking. Well, he ain't gonna be white looking. It would be yellow. He's kind of yellow, but I think that's okay. I don't really neutralize my dolls unless they're just way over the top orange or something. His nose now looks bland again. I'm going to put a little more on it. One thing we want to remember to do is to put every color we put on this doll's face inside the nose. That looks better. Okay, now the last thing I'm going to do before I put him in the oven, I could crease him now, but because his fingers and toes are sort of moist, they're not really wet, but they are sort of moist. The pencil won't take very good. So we're going to wait till next go around to do his pencil. Right now I'm going to paint his lips and his nails. I know I put this real light stuff on his lips, but that was just to make a base. What we want to use is this thick stuff in this little tiny jar. And this is made by using thinning medium. I just took a bottle of thinning medium, and I don't remember if I took any out. Sometimes they're really full and sometimes they're not all that full. But if it's really full, you can't really mix it good with the paint. And so you have to take a little bit of it out. Not to worry, because you use thinning medium to make your paint colors anyway. But I probably removed just a tiny bit of it, just so I could put paint in there and mix it around. So all I did was take a jar of thinning medium and start adding some of the unmixed lip nail blush color to it. And I just kept doing it till it got a dark red color. You see it's very, very dark and bloody looking. Looks like almost like blood. That's the color we're going for. And we're going to put a very thin coat on our doll's lips. Super, super thin. I have to take my glasses off to do this because, well, I need a new prescription and I can't see well. And painting the lips, I'm very, very, very picky about how I paint my lips. And I'm just putting the thinnest of a coat on here. As a matter of fact, when he comes out of the oven, you may not can even see it. It may go back to looking like it's not painted. Oh, it's going to look a little bit pink because I swiped that paintbrush across it too, but The thing is you're not going to be able to tell his lips are really painted, if you know what I mean. They're going to look very bland, and that's okay. What we're trying to do is just get paint on his lips right now. Think about paint, thinning medium as being paint. Paint sticks to paint. That's why we seal too. Sealers like a paint as well. And paint, thinning medium is like paint that has no color. So even if you can't see it on the doll, it's there. And when you paint the second coat, it's going to stick a little better. And we're going to just keep doing this in between every coat of paint we put on the doll until we achieve the color of lips that we like. We're going to say, that looks really good, I'm done. And then after that, you don't have to do any more. Only very rarely, and only if you're using very, very dark colors, does any of the other paint that you put on top of it ever take away the color. It's going to stay, and it's going to look good, and you're going to like it. But if you try to do it all in one go, it's going to look horrible, and you'll hate it. So very, very thin layers is all we want to do. So super thin, you can't even hardly tell I put any paint on there. In fact, I just barely touch the very tip of my brush to the paint. Very, very, very softly. And you can barely tell anything is on it when you're wiping it across the lips. And that's what I want. I want it to be very, very thin. Have I said very enough times? Seems like. But anyway, we're going to get him nice and painted up here. And the same thing goes for the nails. If you try to put a dark color right on your doll's nails, it's going to run or glob up or something, and you won't like it. And you're going to go, wow, I didn't know it was going to do that. That's why I'm telling you, you don't want to do it. Now, you can very well see the lip line. That's why we start very early. I like to put my first coat on the lips before the doll is fully painted on the face, because that's the only time you're going to see the lip line. So all the rest of the time, you're just going to follow the color you already have on there. It looks like this now, but it won't be anywhere near that dark once it's baked. Now we're going to do the same thing to the nails, because we only want to get some color on them. They do have a little swipe of color from where we swipe the toes with the pink color. But now we're going to do just the nails. And we're going to put the tiniest little coat on there we can put, because it will run down to the base of the nail if you put it on thick, and it will look like you just outlined the nails with your paintbrush, and it'll be funky looking. It's not going to look real fabulous anyway, because it's going to be so thin, but it's going to be a base for the next coat and the next coat until we get our color the way we want it. And it won't take as many coats as you think. You're thinking, oh, at that pace, I'm going to have to put 15 coats on there. Well, you won't have to. Each coat comes out a little darker and a little darker and a little darker until you just have the color you want. You go, oh, that's the color I want right there. And then you stop putting it on. I usually put it on every layer but the last layer. That's how many coats I have to put on. I see something between the toes. It probably doesn't matter, but I'm going to try to get it out anyway. Little pieces of fuzz and stuff on your heat set doll doesn't hurt it. It'll just fall off when you bake. But now it's a whole different story if you're using air dry. They mold down. I know I tried air dry. Anyway, we're going to get all these nails painted. And then we're going to get him in for his bake. That's too much. If you can actually see the glob of paint on the end of your brush, you probably have too much. It's going to go on kind of darker than you think anyway. And just a skim of paint is all you really want to get on there. A little skim. Especially on your first go. This one sets the tone pretty much for all the layers you're going to put after it. And don't feel bad if you don't see it. It doesn't matter. If it comes out and it looks like you didn't even paint the nails, that's great. You did a great job. We just really want the tiniest of color and the tiniest of paint. Sometimes I can only tell it's painted because it looks wet. This wet paint is very touchy, way more touchy than the dry paint. But like I said, you can't paint a doll completely with dry paint. You'd have to have 1,000 brushes. So we just do the best we can. This is the third doll I'm working on at the same time. I've got one in, I don't root on my table anymore because the hairs just get everywhere. It'll drive you nuts trying to keep the hairs off your doll. And there's no way to clean up every hair. The best thing is just don't root on this table, the same table you paint on. I root in my bedroom on a rooting pillow, and that way if I drop any hairs or when I'm cutting the hair, if any of them fall on the table, it's not on this table. That's what's important. And I have one doll that's a little further along than this doll. I don't like downtime, so while one doll's baking, I'm usually working on another doll. If I don't have another doll to work on, I'm sealing dolls and prepping them to get started on them and stuff like that. I usually seal about 4 dolls at once, and they have to sit a while before you can bake them. Otherwise, they stick to the liner of your oven, and that's not good. And so I prep them first, and I'll leave them overnight at least on the drying rack. I have enough for 4 dolls, 2 here and 2 on the other table over there, and I'll get them, you know, all gussied up and ready to go. I got to put some more sealer on Frankie's head before he goes in the oven, though. There, that's his nails. Now, normally that's all I'd do, but I'm going to go back and put some sealer on his head because, well, he didn't get covered good on part of his head. So just to make sure, I'm going to put a little skim across the back of the top and the back of his head. And it's a good chance it wouldn't make any difference, but it's right on the edge where if you're rooting hair and stuff, it could show. So what'll happen if I don't do it, the part of the head that doesn't have the sealer will come out to be a different color. Now the sealer, when I mix my sealer, I used to put 3 or 4 of these little jars, but I buy it in these bigger 4-ounce jars now. And so they're about that size. And so I put nearly a whole thing of that in here. And then I put a big glob of thinning medium in that to smooth it out a little because it's super rough. This is some of the roughest sealer you'll ever use. It puts a texture on your doll. And then after I put the thinning medium in there, I put a little bit of regular paint thinner in there. Now I'm just going to feel around on his head and feel where those spots are. One of them's right there. It's a good chance that would be covered by hair, but just in case something happens different. And then there's a spot over here. See, that's right on the edge. Let me feel the rest of his head and see. The rest of it is definitely going to be covered by hair. So that's pretty good, I think. Now that'll bake. And then when it comes out, when he comes out from his first bake, I won't be putting any paint on the back of his head, so it doesn't matter if I bake him twice straight in a row, or if I bake him and then do a little more enhancing to him and then bake him again, because this area has to be cured before you can put any paint on it. But it doesn't have to be back-to-back bakes because I'm not, like I said, I'm not going to be putting any paint on this part of his head right yet. So we'll just go with that. We'll give him a bake. It'll probably feel like it's cured, but it won't be. And then when I do his I'm going to get the word here in a minute. When I do his creases, I'll put him back in for a bake and it'll finish curing. So that's all we're going to do to him right now, and then we're going to get him in the oven and get him ready for his next steps. And we'll come back. The doll that's in there now, I'm still working on her. And so we'll be back to finish another something on her while he's baking. That's how I do it. I have one doll that's getting ready for this color that I have to mix. And then him, I just started. And then I have another doll in the bedroom that I'm rooting. I'm sorry, I have hiccups. But anyway, we'll be back shortly to work on Frankie again. And I'm going to say, please remember to like, subscribe, and share, and happy reborning.